Thank you again for joining us this morning. Welcome to the webinar on business planning. The program is being presented on behalf of the chapters of Massachusetts and Rhode Island District of SCORE. My name is Michael Katz. I'm a volunteer with the Cape Cod and Islands chapter of SCORE. I wanted to cover just a few introductory items before we turn things over to our facilitator for today, my colleague, Mark Goldberg. For those of you who are not already familiar with SCORE, we're a fully volunteer nonprofit organization and a resource partner of the U.S. Small Business Administration. SCORE's mission to foster a vibrant small business communities through mentoring and education. SCORE's been doing this work since its founding in 1964 through educational opportunities like this webinar, and by providing mentoring assistance to people who are in business or thinking about starting a business. Each chapter in our district has a significant number of volunteer mentors and subject matter experts with a broad array of business experience and expertise ready to provide you with mentoring assistance. And we can connect you with volunteers across the country, almost 10,000 different volunteers, enabling us to meet your needs of every client. Importantly, this mentoring is completely free and absolutely confidential. It's really easy to sign up for a SCORE mentor if you wish to do so. You can go back to the SCORE national website, which is score.org. Go to Find the Mentor tab and request a SCORE mentor and to get going. Or you can go to the website listed here for the chapter that covers your geographic area and click on the Find a Mentor tab to get started. Just a few rules for this morning. We ask that you actually use the Q&A feature to ask questions. Use chat only for comments or to communicate with each other. We'll be keeping track of questions as they come in, and it's much easier for us to do this by keeping an eye on just the Q&A feature. The webinar is being recorded, and we'll be sending you an email the next day or two, which will provide you with a link to that recording and some supplementary information. Lastly, our facilitator for today is Mark Goldberg. Mark is a mentor with the Cape and Islands chapter. In fact, he was one of the mentors who helped orient me to the SCORE organization. He's very experienced and an accomplished business executive, and we're fortunate that he has agreed to lead today's discussion. So Mark, I will leave it to you as I stop sharing my screen. Again, if you'd like to ask questions of Mark along the way, please leave those questions in the Q&A section. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Can everyone see my screen? Mike, can you see it?
I sure can, Mark.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. The reason I asked is the last time I did a webinar on networking, I didn't realize it, but the screen wasn't up. So everybody just listened to me for 45 minutes or so. But today what we're going to do is talk about business planning. And we're going to talk about a simple way to undertake business planning, and that's the business model canvas. For those of you who are thinking about starting a business, this is a great way to focus your thinking and your planning. Those of you who are in business, it's also a great way to expand your business and grow your business. So we're going to look at this simple way in a variety of different focuses. So I was told many years ago that the most important thing about going to a workshop or a webinar is to take away at least one thing. Well, many years ago, I went to a workshop out in California where Peter Johnson, a marketing guru, was talking about the whole concept of integrated marketing. So you can tell how long ago that was. But I walked away with one thought: accuracy before momentum. And this is one of the issues that many people get caught up in, especially when they're starting to plan a new business. They go too fast. I believe that crawl, walk, run as a philosophy is a way of planning a business venture effectively and adequately. So being accurate before you gain momentum is critical. And one of the things that the business model canvas does, it provides you with a roadmap for accuracy before you get going too fast. Now, many times we talk about business planning, and when we talk to a client about business planning, normally their eyes roll back in their head because they think about business planning as it was probably done in their business life. I can remember when I worked for Westinghouse Power Gen in Philadelphia, I was responsible for our division strategic plan. And we finished it sometime in June, July. We presented it to our management in August, presented it to our regional group executives in September. We got it approved in November. We put it on the shelf and we waited until June and we started all over again. That's not what business planning is in small businesses. Business planning is a way of communicating. It's a way of communicating to your key influencers, employees, investors, your bank, your neighbors. It's a way of communicating, and it's a way of communicating as a guide. And this is a guide for measuring your performance. How well are you doing at each stage of your development? How well are you managing your business to determine whether you're meeting your near-term goals, intermediate goals, and long-term goals in expanding and growing your business? So it's a great way to lay out what you're doing and how you're doing it and where do you want to go and how are you going to get there. My wife and I owned a trade show marketing company for almost 30 years. We had a one-page business plan that we reviewed once a quarter. And we reviewed it and determined whether the axioms, the assumptions that we made at the beginning still held. If they didn't hold, then we changed the assumptions and we created new business plans and action plans to address those changes. So one of the things you want to think about is that making this a living document. Well, when you think about planning, it answers two questions. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? And how are you going to get there? Because when you think about starting, for example, a consulting business, which one of you is thinking about doing? Well, who do you want to consult with? How do you want to consult with them? Do you want to be a hands-on? Do you want to be somebody in the background that guides and then allows the client to do the bulk of the work? And how are you going to get there? What are you going to do to generate clients? What are you going to do to maintain clients? What are you going to do to make the vision of your business work? Well, one of the things that you do in business planning is you look at strategies and tactics. And without going back to marketing 101, strategies are what are you going to do to achieve your objectives, and tactics is the how. So what you want to do is you want to think in terms of what do you want to do? How are you going to get there? And what are the action plans you're going to put in place in order to achieve those goals? Now, one of the things you want to think about is the plan is only as long as it's essential to convey your message, your story. Now, when we did a business plan for the power generation division that I worked for, it was 30, 40 pages. When we did the business plan for my business, Marketech 360, it was 1 page. That was long enough to communicate what were our objectives, what is it we wanted to get accomplished, what kind of metrics we were going to apply to the plan. So it's only as long as it's essential for you to communicate the message. And as I said before, it's a living document. Just because you finished writing the plan doesn't mean it's done. Because you want to, especially when you're launching your business, you want to keep reviewing it. Look at the assumptions, look at the plans. Do they hold water? Are they working? So you use it as a guide to your ultimate goal, and that's launching your business or growing your business. Now, many of you will need funds. You'll need to finance your business. Unlike ourselves, we took cash out of our savings account and we put it into a business account and we said, okay, this is our launch fund. Some of you will have to go to a lender to generate funds, and you will need a full business plan. You will need more than the business model canvas. And there are a number of different templates available to you. The SBA has a template, SCORE has a template, But the one that I find really good, especially if you're a novice to business planning, is Seed Corp, Southeast Economic Development Corporation's template. What you do to go to their site, which is listed here, and you go to resources right here, and just go to the bottom of resources, and it says business plan template. Click on it. Now, why is it so good? It's good because instead of just saying, write a description of your business venture, it asks you questions that then give you the base for writing your story. And that's what this is. A business plan is a story. It's a story about your vision, your mission, what it is you're trying to get accomplished. How are you going to get it accomplished? Who is going to do the work? What makes them qualified to do the work? What kind of financing do you need? And some projections of where do you think it's going to go in the first 12, 24, or 36 months? What kind of P&L, profit and loss? What kind of balance sheet? What kind of cash flow will you generate in that period? So it's a full-blown story. But today we're going to talk about a simpler way of looking at planning. And that's the business model canvas. The
Hey,
business
Mark,
model,
Mark, can I just interrupt you for just a second?
sure.
We've had several folks join us since you actually began your presentation. So I just wanted to remind them, if you have any questions, Mark will try to address those along the way. So if you'd put those questions in the Q&A function, I'll be monitoring those and passing those along to Mark for his information and answering. And also, if you wouldn't mind putting your name into the chat box and indicating whether you're currently in business and what that business might be, or whether you're thinking about getting into business. So that would be helpful to us also in trying to address any questions or comments that might be appropriate for you. Thank you. Right back to you, Mark.
Okay. Well, the business model canvas was actually created by Alexander Osterwalder in Europe, and it was primarily used for startups in the tech world. But it's actually absolutely applicable to people who are starting businesses in any segment. And it is a tactical tool. It's a way of thinking through what is the business? Who are the customers? What is it that you are offering them? So it's a way of brainstorming what you're thinking about doing. And the thing that most people don't realize is the toughest part of planning a business is staying focused. Because as you do the planning, there are all kinds of ideas that pop into your head, all kinds of tactics that you think about. And what happens is you've got to stay focused on what it is that you are actually trying to do. So it acts as a brainstorming tool. It's also the basis for your operating plan, because one of the elements is, what are the activities that you are planning and need to plan for in operating your business? What are all the activities, accounting and marketing and metrics and public relations? So what you want to do is think in terms of, it's a way of starting to think about the operations. But what it is, for those of you who need a full-blown plan, it is the framework around which you can write the bigger plan. Now, the business model canvas works because it's a holistic approach to your business. It's just a one-page snapshot of everything that it takes to start this business, from the activities to the partners, to the strategic partners, to the resources you need, to the operations side of the business, to the marketing side of the business. It helps you visualize how all these pieces fit together to create a business entity. The thing I like most about it is very simple and very clear. And you'll see as we go through the examples that we're going to use with Planet Fitness. Because it's concise, it's easy to understand, it's on one page where all the information is accessible so that you can then move from planning to activity. It's adaptable. It's simple. If you make an assumption and that assumption doesn't work out, you can actually just line it out and put a new assumption in. And what it does, it promotes experimentation in your planning. The what if we do this? What will the outcome be? And then test it. It's also focused on customer value. If I had to say there's anything that I learned in 30 years of operating our own business, plus the years I spent in corporate life, that if you are not customer valued, customer focused, and dedicated to focusing on your customer, you're not going to be in business very long because they're the driver of what keeps the revenue flowing. It also supports strategic discussion. Because it's a visual layout, it promotes discussion about what if you do this, what happens to your plan? And because strategy is a way of looking at what it is you're going to do and how you're going to do it, it's easy to understand and communicate to others. It also promotes prioritization. And one of the things you want to think about as you launch your business is what's urgent in developing the plan and what's just important, so that you focus on the critical areas of success. For example, if defining the subsets of your customer segments is urgent, then you're going to be spending a lot of time in this planning defining the subsets of your customer segments. If in fact you find that the marketing, that is identifying the subsets and how you're going to communicate with them, is the really critical part, the urgent part, you're going to spend the time there. And lastly, it provides a financial focus, which is very difficult in the planning. And that's the question I get most from people when they do the planning. How do I know what my sales are going to be? How do I know what my expenses are going to be? Well, you make assumptions about what your sales are going to be and how they're going to ramp up over the first 12 months, in the first 24 months. You make assumptions on what will your fixed and variable costs do as you ramp up your sales. And then as you launch into the business, you adjust and you modify. So the business model canvas looks like this. It's 9 blocks. And we're going to talk about each one of these 9 blocks. The right side has to do with the customer and how you reach the customer. The left side deals with the operations. And the bottom is your financials. So we're going to look at each one of these segments in real time and adjust as we go forward. Number 1, what's your value proposition? And that is, what problem are you solving? What need, want, or desire are you offering your customers? This is not what you do. This is the need, want, or desire that you are offering and the problem that you're solving. So you're going to ask yourself, what's so compelling about what you're offering? And what gain or value are you creating for your customer segments? So you need to understand what problems or needs your customers have, and then ask yourself, what are we doing to assist them? What are we doing to satisfy them? And then what is your differentiator? Now, if you go back to Marketing 101, we all know that the differentiator creates competitive advantage. This is in your value proposition. Your competitive advantage is what positions you in the mind of a buyer where they see no suitable substitute for yourself. So it's not what you do. It's more about solving a problem. So let's take a look at this graphically. Your customer is on the right and you're on the left. Now your customer has jobs to do. They have pains that they are facing. For example, if you're doing consulting, they might not know how to create a social media marketing plan. Well, what you provide them our services in the way of consulting, assisting them in providing an outline or a template that they can use, which is a pain reliever. And this pain reliever becomes a gain for your customer. So your value proposition is, how are you solving the issues that they're facing? Now, I chose Planet Fitness this year. Last year, we used we used Uber as an example. So this year, we're using Planet Fitness. So their value proposition is, for their regular gym users, they align with fitness goals. For their casuals, they cater to the flexibility and convenience of coming whenever people have the time to come. And for their first-time users, they help them start on their fitness journey by giving them a guided tour of the gym. Now, the second block is customer segments. That is, for whom are you creating value? Who are these individual segments that you're creating value? And you may have multiple segments. For example, our primary buyer in our business were trade show exhibit managers or meeting managers. But there was also another set of buyers, and that was their management. And they were the sales and marketing executives. Or it may be the owners of the company if it was a smaller business. We also had another segment that was show organizers. And we had another segment that was exhibit builders. Now, for each one of these segments, we had a variety of value propositions. So what you want to do is define, who are your customers? What do they think, see, feel, or do? How do they buy? Why do they buy? So when you think about those things, then your value proposition applies to each segment a little bit differently. And then you have to ask yourself, well, where are they? How do you define them? Do you find them geographically? Do you find them socially? Do you define them with an age group? For example, I had a client that had sold women's clothing online, but they were grunge clothing. So their buyers were 14 to 20-year-old young women and their mothers. Two segments, two different age groups, two different value propositions. So to convey your value proposition, you have to clearly identify who it is that you're trying to reach. Who is going to be the buyer? Now, we also know already for Planet Fitness, they have regular gym users, people that go 5 days a week. Or in the case of my son-in-law, 7 days a week. There are casual gym users like myself that go 4 or 5 days a week, and I go sometimes in the morning if I have time, sometimes in the afternoon I have time. And then there are first-time users. Those are people that are just starting out. 3 completely different segments, 3 completely different value propositions that Planet Fitness has to generate and then apply to them. The third segment are channels. Now, these can be sales channels. These can be communication channels. And the question you have to ask yourself is, how are you going to reach your customer segments? Now, for us in our business, we met with our initial and primary customer at trade shows and events. Either our national show, which is held once a year, where there are 5,000 buyers there, or at individual trade shows where we saw them on the floor with their businesses. When you think in terms of the grunge clothing, the channels are very different, reaching a 14 to 20-year-old versus the mother or parents of those 14 to 20-year-olds. So you have to ask your customer segments, How do you get your information? How do you get the information that you need? Well, if somebody wants to reach me, the first thing they need to do is have something in the Cape Cod Times, because the very first thing I do at 6 o'clock in the morning is I go online and read the Cape Cod Times. Why online? Because the Cape Cod Times can't find my driveway. So I decided to go digital. I look at Facebook, I look at LinkedIn, I look at my email. I read every postcard I get. So I'm a traditional marketer recipient. So people have to ask, how do your customers get their information? I would say the 14-year-old probably gets all of her information online. And the mother or father or parents of that 14-year-old probably get it in a variety of different ways. So what you want to ask yourself is how's your value proposition communicated to them? How's it delivered so they see that you can fulfill their need? And then you have to test whether your value proposition is being received and then acted upon. So the question you need to ask yourself constantly is, how do your customer segments get their information? And it may change from time to time. It may change depending on the offering. We have a restaurant here that communicates to its loyalty members online, but you also get a postcard. And you bring the postcard with you, or you can bring your cell phone with the coupon that's online. Because they know that some of their customers get their communication online, and some of them still like to get a postcard. Now, Planet Fitness has two primary channels. One is online, and the other is their franchise model, where you just can walk in and see what's going on. But they also have communications online. Okay, you've looked at the value proposition, you've looked at the customer segments, you've looked at the channels. These are all assumptions that you have made based upon your knowledge of the business that you want to launch or the business you want to grow. You need to now stop. Remember I talked about crawl, walk, run? You're crawling now. You need to stop and validate the assumptions. You need to find people who are in your customer segments and test your value proposition and ask them, how do they get their information, so that you can then move on to the next levels of the planning. If you find that your assumptions were not valid, then go back and change them and then validate them again with another set of customer segments. Do not ask your friends and family, because they're going to give you the answers you want. Find people that are in the customer segments and ask them, interview them, get input from them. That's the only way you're going to know whether the assumptions you made hold water. The next block you want to ask yourself is, what kind of relationship do you want with the customer? Now, for some, it's an annual kind of relationship. For some, it's a monthly relationship. For some, it's a daily relationship. For example, if you're going to start a podcast, it may be a weekly relationship. One of my best friend's grandson has a podcast, and it's a weekly relationship because every week he launches a new podcast. And he reaches out to his customer base and he wants them to tune in to his latest podcast. My grandson has a YouTube channel. He posts every single week. He wants his 1,000 or so subscribers to tune in every week to see what he has to say about Volkswagen GTIs and other German manufactured cars. So you want to ask yourself, what kind of relationship do you want? Well, the first question you have to fulfill is, how do you acquire your customers? How do you retain them? How do you grow your customers? And What kind of relationship do you want? Well, the relationship that we had in MarkeTech was we connected with them every time they went to a major show. But some of our customers use this every year at their major events, some of them every other year. But we had a plan to stay in touch with them on a regular basis throughout the entire year, so that we became a go-to resource for more than training and measurement, which was the focus of our business. Training staff how to work shows and measuring their performance. Because of that, we gained value with them. What you want to do is figure out, how do you keep them coming back to you and asking for more of what you offer? So to determine that, you've got to ask yourself, what's the relationship you want with them, and how are you going to attain that as part of the business plan? Well, when you look at Planet Fitness, their relationship has to do with their supportive relationship when they're there, as well as while they are planning to use Planet Fitness. The next step starts looking at the inside. And the question you have to ask yourself is, what are the activities that you will need in order to fulfill your value proposition? So when you think about your business, what is everything that you have to do in order to make it work? What are the activities that give you that competitive advantage? What kind of activities do you need to become that best or expert in your business? And when we look at it, we look at accounting and marketing and operations and assembly, if you have, or social media. Look at all the activities that it takes in order to run your business and which are the most important ones. Now, I have to tell you, there are two basic activities that the owner of a business has to either do him or herself or control. Number one is sales generation, revenue. And the second is cash management. The majority of businesses that fail because there's no need, therefore there's no revenue, or they run out of money. That's why cash flow management is so important. Understanding what you have at the beginning of every month, what you need, what comes in, and how much do you have left at the end of the month to start the next month. Every time I go to the bank, they ask me, do you want to see your balance? And I say, no, I look at my balance every single day. Because for 30 years, I started every single day with, what do I have in the way of cash? What's owed to us in the way of cash? What do we have to invoice to get those funds? And what do we owe to other people? Now, I did a P&L on a regular basis. My QuickBooks spit it out at the end of every accounting period. But cash management is the way we ran our business. So when you think about activities, it may be manufacturing, if you're thinking about manufacturing, marketing and sales, and those are two very different functions. Maybe distribution, it may be delivery, it may be follow-up. All the activities that it takes in order to run this business. So you need to detail everything you think it takes to run it. What are you going to do, and what do you get others to do? Now, when you think about others, what you want to think about is Planet Fitness. They have established fitness centers that have activities, and they have creating this inclusive environment that goes on at a Planet Fitness gym. So when you think about all the activities, you have to ask yourself, okay, who are our partners and who are our suppliers, and how are we going to get all of this done? You know, you hear constantly that owning a small business is 24/7. It is. There's no question about it. You're thinking about it all the time. You have a problem you're working on at 4 o'clock in the morning, the solution comes to you. Now, my wife and I, we were partners for almost 30 years in this business. The only time we didn't talk business was when we went on vacation. And each of us took a notebook. And as we thought of things that we wanted to either use or thought of solutions or thought of activities that we wanted to undertake, we wrote it down. We didn't talk about it. When we got home, we then shared each other's notes. But you need to think in terms of how are you going to get all the activities done that it takes in order to run your small business? Well, you have partners, and your partners really start with your bank, whether you have a loan or not. Once a quarter, I used to sit down with my bank manager, talk about what we're doing, how we're doing it, and he would say, well, what do you think we can do to help you grow your business? Well, it came to a time where we were creating the very first software that was utilized in the trade show and event industry for measurement. And we needed some funds in order to fund the development. And after about 20 years in business, we actually worked with our bank to help us launch this segment of our business. Your suppliers are your partners. When we first started our business, all of our presentations were on slides. Our slide maker was our partner. Our graphic designer was our partner because everything was on paper. Our brochures, our line cards, our tear cards, they were all on paper. He created them. For those of you who have a product business, your suppliers provide you with a line of credit. I was with a friend of mine this weekend, and he owned 7 Hallmark card stores. I didn't realize that they ordered their Christmas gifts in March and April, but didn't pay for them until December. A line of credit from Hallmark cards. And your shippers might be. Now, there are also other kind of partners. There might be strategic partners. We used to partner strategically with exhibit builders, with marketing services companies that had clients who needed training and measurement. We formed joint ventures. So you want to think in terms of who are your partners that can help you get the job of running and managing a small business. Now, for Planet Fitness, it was equipment manufacturers, apparel brands, and maintenance people. So they had a variety of people that helped them be partners. So ask yourself, who are your key partners? What activities will they undertake? And the activities they undertake will allow you to focus on the important things, sales generation and cash management. Some of you may, at some point, have employees, human resources, managing people. So ask yourself, who will help you create these relationships with your customers to support what it is you're undertaking in your business? Well, after we looked at activities and resources and partners, we have to ask ourselves, what kind of resources do we need? What do we need in order to execute our value proposition? What kind of capital do you need? What kind of line of credit do you need? What kind of physical plant do you need? Some of you will be opening up a brick and mortar store. What do you need in this store? If it's a retail store, what kind of fixtures do you need? If you're going to have intellectual property, what kind of trademarks will you require? So you need to ask yourself, what is it you need from a financial, physical plant, logistics, and intellectual property standpoint in order to launch and execute your business? And then you have to ask yourself, what do you need to do to attract and keep employees? because human capital is the driver of all businesses. So asking yourself, what are the must-have resources that you will require? Well, there's human, financial, physical, and intellectual. These are the assets that your business will require. And you need to ask yourself, what do you need? For example, what kind of knowledge do you need? In order to do what you're doing, do you need to get certified? What kind of skills do you need in order to undertake what you're doing? So ask yourselves these questions so that, in fact, you can look at what is it going to take in order to support the activities to provide the value proposition for your business. So in Planet Fitness case, their gym facilities and their brand reputation are the resources that they need. And brand reputation is critical because there's any number of a dozen different gyms you can go to in any location. Now's the tough part, because all the costs and all the revenue streams are not apparent. So you have to look at the activities of your business and ask yourself, what are the most important costs that you have in order to launch and generate your business? So you're going to be looking at fixed costs and variable costs. If you have a brick and mortar, your fixed cost may be your rent. And your variable costs may be your utilities. They may be your inventory. So you need to ask yourselves, what are your fixed variable costs and what are your economies of scale? And then detail them. The first you're going to look at is launching. What is it going to take to launch this business? And secondly, what's going to take to operate this business over the long term? What's it going to take in order to have positive cash flow? For 30 years, I had a sign above my desk. Happiness is positive cash flow. That you always have more coming in than you have going out. So what do you need in order to make this work? Well, Planet Fitness has real estate expenses, staff salaries, equipment costs, operating expenses like maintaining all that equipment. And then what are your revenue streams? Where are you going to get the resources in order to cover the cost to generate a gross profit margin to pay yourself, to grow, to invest in the business? So the question you got to ask yourself is, how does your business earn revenue? What's your customer willing to pay for? Who are they currently buying from and what are they paying today? Now, in our business, we had a variety of revenue streams because we train staff how to work trade shows and events. Our primary revenue stream was live training. We would go to the show or go to their business and train their staff how to change, modify, transition their skills to work at trade shows and events. But we also offered online training. And we offered computer-based training, live computer-based training. We also offered measurement. And measurement could be subjective or objective. It could be at the show. It could be online. So what you want to do is you want to think what are all the revenue streams that you have that can be applied to your cash flow? If you have fees, if you have subscriptions, you have discounts, if you have rebates, what are all the revenue streams? And how does it apply to delivering your value proposition? Because it all comes back to the value proposition. What are you offering? What are you doing to alleviate your customers' needs, wants, and desires in solving their problems? So our Planet Fitness, they have membership fees, they have retail merchandise sales, and they have franchise sales. But there's one more block that's not in Osterwalder's business model canvas, and that's your competition. You cannot do your plan without looking at who is your competitor, who are your competitors, where are they located, what are they offering, what is the focus of their competition, how are they positioned, do they operate in a niche, what is their competitive advantage, what benefits do they offer, how do they position themselves with differentiators? So you need to understand them as well as you understand yourself. Sun Tzu said it. If you know your competition as well as you know yourself, you'll win 100 battles. But if you don't, you'll lose. Now that's paraphrasing Sun Tzu from the 6th generation. But what you want to do is you want to ask yourself, who are your competitors and what is it they're going to offer that you have to overcome, or what they will use to overcome you in the marketplace? Now, take a look at the business model canvas and break it apart differently. You have business infrastructure, which is your partners, your activities, and your resources. You have customer infrastructure, your customers, your customer relationship, and your channels. You have business value, which is your cost structure and your revenue streams. And you have your customer value, which is that all-important value proposition. This provides focus. This allows you to think in terms of all the elements that are critical in order for you to plan and launch your small business. But remember, you need to test and validate your value proposition, your customers, and your channels before you go forward. Now, for most of my SCORE clients that are launching a business, I recommend reading The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. He wrote a new book called The E-Myth Enterprise. I read that over last weekend for the second time. And two things popped out that I think apply to the business model canvas. Number one, every business must learn to satisfy better than its competitors. That's your competitive advantage. It must satisfy better to its workers in order to retain those valued workers, to its buyers, its customers, so they continue to buy from you, to its suppliers, so they continue to have faith in you and provide you with what you need in order to provide your value proposition, and your lenders, the people that provide the financial underpinnings for your business. But the success of a business is to give buyers more than they expect. And more is embodied in that good idea that allowed you to begin to launch your value proposition. When people start a business or want to start a business, I got a great idea. That great idea is the basis of your value proposition. Well, Winston Churchill said it better than anybody else. Those who fail to plan, plan to fail. Well, I hope you've picked up a point or two with the business model canvas today. Along with the video, I'm going to be sending the PowerPoint presentation to our coordinator so that you have all the slides as well as the attachment to the slides, which is a template for a full-blown business plan. I'm going to turn it back to Mike, and if he has any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. We have a few more minutes.
Thanks, Mark. We do have one question from Deanna, and her question is, do you see fundraising as the only revenue stream in the nonprofit business plan where there is no charge to the clients for services?
Well, there are many nonprofits that have membership as a revenue stream. So membership, when you look at development plan, membership is one of the elements in development planning, but certainly sponsorships, having partners, but fundraising is a global kind of overview. Mike has spent a good bit of his career in nonprofit. He might be able to add to this.
Yeah, I would like to contribute, Mark, that fundraising is a broad area, and you can consider obviously private sponsorships and donations in addition to grants from different foundations and corporate sponsorships in some cases. I was part of a nonprofit that was actually supported by a number of different corporations locally who would in turn give pass-through grants to clients. So I would encourage Deanna to think about sort of the expansiveness of fundraising and not to necessarily channel your attention in just one area or another. We have another question from Sheila: how to tackle a business plan idea that is meant to be for patient services sector, for pain management in particular. And we've had a few participants who are in the fitness, health, and wellness area. So any pointers, Mark, for sort of addressing that business sector in terms of business planning?
I would say that it applies to almost all business sectors, all sectors of whether it be healthcare or whether it be production of a manufactured product. You have a value proposition, and that value proposition is a wellness proposition of some sort, and it starts there, and then identifying who it is that you are seeking in the way of customer segments that need what you are offering. They have a need, want, or desire that you're offering. It's clearly not that difficult and different. Okay.
A couple of folks have asked about the business planning resource, and I passed along the link or the website for seedcorp.org that Mark had referred to earlier.
Or you could go to www.score.org and find the SCORE template, or the SBA. If you go to www.sba.org, you'll find, or .gov, you'll find a template there. But as I said, I found that the Seed Corp really is great because it asks you questions about each one of the segments.
Another question was, let me make sure I get this right, from LJ. Great information, but how can it all be consolidated into one page? Which is a question I think we often get, Mark, and that's sort of the beauty of the business model canvas. Don't bank lenders or investors require more than one page? And I'll let you address that. You talked about it earlier in your presentation.
Right. The business model canvas primarily is designed for those businesses that are either self-funded or do not need lender financing. If you are going to look for lender financing, the business model canvas is a great way to begin the process. It's a way to focus what it is that you want to tell in the bigger story, and then use it as a launching point to write the business plan. I had a client that just bought a kennel, and she used the business model canvas just to focus her ideas, and then wrote a business plan for the bank that ended up lending them the money they needed in order to acquire the kennel.
Yeah, and I would add that the discipline of doing the business model canvas before going through or contemplating putting together a business plan is just a great discipline. And it's an iterative process, as Mark had said. If you can consolidate your thinking and get that down to one page, it would actually then be a whole lot easier to do a full-blown business plan. Again, the theory of walking before you're running.
Yeah, less is more. I mean, when you can, and consolidation of thoughts is a real talent. I mean, you have to work at it so that you're not saying too much. And many times, I have to tell you, one of my very first clients was a venture capital company, and they had me reviewing business plans before they took it to their committee to review. And I can tell you that they most of the time never got past the first page because they were too cumbersome. There was too many words. It was too detailed. So when you think in terms of the business model canvas, it forces you to really focus your thinking. And that helps a lot. You can build the detail later. Any others?
I don't see any more questions coming in.
Okay.
So again,
Thanks, Mike.
thank you everybody for joining us this morning for this SCORE webinar. If you have any other questions or are interested in reaching out to a SCORE mentor, again, visit score.org. And there's a feature or a function right at the top of the website to find a mentor in your geographic area. And we thank you again for joining this morning's webinar. You'll get a link in an email to a recorded webinar. And you'll find a lot of other recorded webinars and upcoming webinars on the score.org website as well. Thanks again to Mark, and good luck to everybody out there, either in business or contemplating starting their own business. Thanks, folks.
Thanks, Mike.